This video is brought to you by Incogni. Stick around to hear more about the special offer they are providing to the entire upper echelon community. Quote, "Is it safe to say that LLMs are, in essence, making us dumber? No, please do not use words like stupid, dumb, brain rot, harm, damage, passivity, trimming, and so on. It does a huge disservice to this work, as we did not use this vocabulary in the paper, especially if you are a journalist reporting on it." End quote. Okay, so that's a quote from MIT, specifically its Technology Research Lab, which is quite obviously attempting to be as diplomatic as possible, I guess. I can certainly understand the fact that this institution wants to avoid inflammatory rhetoric, words like stupid or dumb or brain rot especially can easily make readers or viewers feel personally attacked. But when speaking about this paper in particular, I specifically want to use those words. ChatGPT, as well as other large language models beyond it, are making a lot of people stupid, and I think describing it that way is more than fair. It's flat out necessary. How about a little demonstration of sorts? For anyone who uses Twitter, I don't refer to it as X, and I never will. Take a trip on over there and simply type in, "Grok explain this," or "Grok, what does this mean?" Sorting by most recent, what you'll immediately be faced with is tens of thousands of people unironically asking the AI model what they should think, or how they should interpret pretty much any kind of topic imaginable. Israel-Palestine, oil prices, domestic and foreign policy, gender theory, economics, or current events. Quite literally everything. "Grok, what does this mean? Grok, explain this to me."
What is he really saying
please
here?
wipe my ass.
Grok, I need your help. I don't understand. I don't understand. Grok, help me figure it out. Can you explain this for me? Grok, Grok, what does this mean? Jokes aside, it's brain death. Instead of rational evaluation, critical thinking, personal research, or self-driven opinion even, these people are actively surrendering the very thoughts that they have to an AI program. And that level of intellectual emptiness makes you an idiot. Here's the thing though, given the fact that this kind of technology, or at least the widespread commercial availability of it, is relatively new, there's not really any compelling research about what these programs actually do to your brain, which is where the MIT study comes into the picture. After this message. Basically every single technology company in the world right now with the capability to log personal information and data about you is doing it. You can't really stop companies from doing that right at the moment, mostly because of completely voluntary end-user licensing agreements in order to use their services, which we all sign. But what you can do is curb the spread of that data when possible by certain third parties. Companies maintain a lot of your information on their servers even after you discontinue any given service, and that information goes on to be sold by data brokers. Of course, you see no benefit from this, and if you ever wondered why you suddenly have a rapid increase of scam phone calls or text messages, it's because your data was part of a list and got sold to a telemarketing company, as just one example. It's much more complicated than that, but you get the idea. For everyday users, it's nearly impossible to take action. There's hundreds of these data brokers, and it's a lengthy process to contact them, fight objections, and get anything removed. However, Incogni executes that whole process for you quickly and easily. Overall, it's extremely simple. Sign up for the website, give them legal permission to work on your behalf, and let them know the specifics of what they'll be having removed. After that, going down the list, they contact the brokers that they have on file, and they do it. Aggregating the service lets them streamline the process, and you'll see results in a custom dashboard almost immediately. Less data brokers and third-party marketing companies who have your information means everything from less spam or junk mail all the way to less potential for data breaches. Using the link down below in the description and code Echelon at checkout, you can get 60% off an annual subscription to Incogni. Again, link down below and promo code Echelon for 60% off your subscription. Big thank you to Incogni for sponsoring the channel. Okay, back to it. At least the juicy parts, that is. This right here is a preprint research paper, which was released before the peer review editing process, explicitly because of how pressing the issue may become, which conducted EEG scans, as in electroencephalography, on 54 separate students across 3 different participating groups. The LLM group, which would use large language model assistance when writing English essays, the search engine group, which would be allowed search engine access instead, and the final brain-only group of students, who would be writing from their own creative minds. Without overcomplicating the video, this kind of research material is extremely boring at times, I want to read a couple of segments right now so that we can more accurately discuss the situation afterwards. Quote, "The most pronounced difference emerged in alpha band connectivity, with the brain-only group showing significantly stronger semantic processing networks. The critical connection from left parietal, P7, to right temporal, T8 regions demonstrated highly significant group differences. This P7 to T8 pathway was complemented by enhanced connectivity from parieto-occipital regions to anterior frontal areas. The temporal regions T8 emerged as a major convergence hub in the brain-only group, end quote. Continuing further down, quote again, the brain-only group also demonstrated stronger occipital to frontal information flow. The total significant connectivity for the brain-only group was equal to 79 connections, compared to only 42 connections for the LLM group, end quote. Obviously, there's a tremendous amount of additional explanation and descriptive nuance here. It's a 206-page paper after all, but there's one more paragraph that I want to read directly before then kind of generally summarizing. Quote, we found that the brain-only group exhibited strong variability in how participants approached essay writing across most topics. In contrast, the LLM group produced statistically homogeneous essays within each topic, showing significantly less deviation compared to the other groups, end quote. So with that out of the way, and at the risk of over-summarizing here, and I'll link the paper down below, obviously, for anyone who actually wants to go read it for themselves, I do suggest it. But at the risk of oversimplifying things, the group of students using a large language model to assist their work underperformed significantly at practically every single level: neural, linguistic, and behavioral. What's more, they wrote overly homogeneous essays, which were identified easily and described by English professors as soulless or lacking original thought, and they had a nearly non-existent ability to recall quotes or content from this work afterwards, substantially weaker alpha and theta brainwaves. Over the course of several months, the students also became lazier with each consecutive essay, so much so that by the end of the study, they were typically copy and pasting results with next to zero additional effort of any kind. In the final phase, when the group was then given the task of writing an essay themselves without the assistance of that AI program, they struggled significantly, performing worse than either of the competing groups at all levels of the creative process, effectively bypassing their own memory and showcasing that large language models have a sizable, measurable, and extremely negative impact on the learning and creative thinking process. I certainly understand, I guess, why MIT research associates want to avoid inflammatory rhetoric such as idiot or stupid, but I don't care, because the encroaching reality that I've been warning about for what feels like years now is that over-reliance on large language model tools, especially at a younger age, creates a population of morons. Just to reinforce that point, by the way, according to Pew Research from 2023 to 2024, the number of US teenagers using ChatGPT for schoolwork precisely doubled, with an explosion of anecdotes across pretty much every single academic field out there about how cheating with the assistance of AI tools is creating students who are, quote, according to California State ethics professor Troy Jollimore, quote, essentially illiterate, both in the literal sense and in the sense of being historically illiterate and having no knowledge of their own culture, much less anyone else's, end quote. Now, by itself, that's already a massive issue, okay? It is. But there's another piece of the puzzle, this time pertaining directly to the United States government. This monstrosity right here is the big, beautiful bill, which is slowly making its way through the legislative arena, let's call it. Regardless of where anyone stands politically on the topic of policy or taxes or partisan issues of any kind, contained within that bill is this, quote, Section 43201, Artificial Intelligence and Information Technology Modernization Initiative, Paragraph C, Moratorium. In general, except as provided in paragraph 2, no state or political subdivision thereof may enforce during the 10-year period beginning on the date of the enactment of this act any law or regulation of that state or a political subdivision thereof limiting, restricting, or otherwise regulating artificial intelligence models, artificial intelligence systems, or automated decision systems entered into interstate commerce, end quote. Once again, running the risk of oversimplifying to a degree, depending on when it is that you watch this, that is an extremely contentious issue which may or may not survive the editing process and be signed eventually into law. So far, as of the scripting of the video, there's a multitude of changes already proposed, one of which ties that kind of regulation to a certain government funding initiative called BEAD or BEAD, but even if it's a watered-down version or a trade-off in subsidies and other government grants when a state does decide to regulate AI companies, basically just trying to punish them into never regulating, the fact of the matter is that we don't even fully understand just how negative these programs already are on the development of young minds. And that is where the biggest problem is. Let's connect everything back together now. Despite the explicit desire from MIT researchers to not use their paper as a claim that AI is making people stupid, they use that word in particular among others, even when they themselves released that research as a preprint, non-peer-reviewed publication because of how pressing it is, it turns out that the lead researcher, Natalia Kuzmina, in a direct statement given to Time magazine, said, quote, "What really motivated me to put it out now before waiting for a full peer review is that I am afraid in 6 to 8 months there will be some policymaker who decides let's do GPT kindergarten. I think that would be absolutely bad and detrimental. Developing brains are at the highest risk." End quote. Hopefully the problem is now becoming obvious. On the surface, it may seem admirable that MIT researchers want to avoid provocative headlines or don't want to use inflammatory rhetoric. But when the pressing nature of their research, combined with a clearly demonstrated effort by the US government to completely deregulate the entire industry of AI through federal legislation, is such that the lead researcher thinks within 6 to 8 months we could see GPT kindergarten, that this is an existential threat to the very fabric of human intelligence right now. I sound like an unhinged alarmist, okay? I get that. But if you genuinely want to make a difference, you have to provoke people. Overly intellectualized headlines and keywords like cognitive debt, as interesting as it may be to some, and it's accurately descriptive in a lot of ways, it doesn't really motivate a large number of people to take any action, whether it be calling their representatives or protesting or even just consciously limiting the usage of these programs in their own households as parents or siblings or whatever. However, a statement like, "This is making your kids stupid," which it is, that kind of does motivate action. Large language models, in particular ChatGPT for the moment, but there's many other similar programs out there, are infiltrating the learning process to a degree where the next generation coming out of our institutions soon are being described by their own professors as essentially illiterate, while MIT research is indicating substantial decline in the quality of their memorization, motivation, creativity, and even original thought. Meanwhile, over the span of just a couple years at this point, we've witnessed the production and mass adoption of a program like Grok, as probably the worst example, which is now unironically being used as some sort of brain proxy by tens of thousands, more like hundreds of thousands of people all around the world. Some viewers in the comments and emails and direct messages, whatever, call me a Luddite in a derogatory sense, as in opposed to the adoption of new technology. But when we're talking about large language models, I am completely against their usage in the education system because they turn people into fucking morons. Perhaps the only acceptable instance that I can think of would be in higher education, electives maybe, on their usage in certain job fields, teaching perhaps 20 and 21-year-olds what they're facing in the workforce, right? Certain career fields at a collegiate level. But usage of these programs in the same way that we disallow alcohol because it impedes brain function should be completely restricted for those under a certain age. At the end of the day, I can't really make any of that happen. Perhaps even the government shouldn't be making that happen either, but they certainly shouldn't be banning that from taking place at a state level. And everyone involved in the modern education system, from parents to educators, should be well aware that the usage of these tools is dramatically impacting the minds of their students. In my opinion, a prediction that I've been watching progressively come true more and more over the past several years, in my opinion, AI is a severely detrimental thing where damage and relative risk are currently an overwhelming concern. What I see is an industry where the downsides can very easily surpass the benefits if we're not careful. And we don't exactly have a great track record of that here in the United States if we're talking about using new technology before fully understanding it. I mean, for fuck's sake, man, if you let them, large companies will literally dump cancer-causing chemicals in the water supply because it's cheaper. What do we think they're going to do when faced with the potential for billion-dollar contracts by using ChatGPT-style tools in low-grade education systems? Do we think they're going to say no for ethical reasons because they're stunting the mental growth of the children? Yeah, that's a pretty good joke. Anyway, MIT may not want the alarmist language and the demeaning rhetoric, but I certainly do, because ChatGPT and similar large language model programs are making you and your children comparatively stupid. That's it. If you want to support the channel, check out the links down below. The video sponsor, of course, Locals and Patreon, a special VPN deal, and more, but I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, question everything, and have a nice night.